Welcome to the Zachrilege cast, Gayle Jordan.
Hi there.
How's it going this evening?
It is dandy. It was a beautiful spring day. I got the grass mowed. It's pretty outside. The birds are singing and spring is here.
Yeah, it really is. You're in the kind of the same, I guess, weather zone as I am in the South. Like you get that little one last kick of winter that usually comes in some point in April. If you maybe planted something, you get like one more freeze. It's like, okay, we turned the ceiling fan around to the summer setting, and then it's like, oh, it gets down to 42, and you're like, ooh, this is not good.
Yeah, and I like to plant both flowers and vegetables and all that. And I won't put a thing in the ground until well after the 20th. April 20th is kind of my marker. And then I'll look at the forecast, and sometimes I have to wait another 5 or 6 days after that.
Well, Easter's a good time for that, and we'll get to Easter in a little bit. I appreciate you agreeing to be on. You actually were in the audience for the podcast session at NanoCon, and you're a very key figure in NanoCon happening. But before we get to kind of NanoCon talk, I kind of wanted to know, since you want to talk about this, like how did you get involved with Daryl Ray and recovering from religion?
That's a good question. Daryl Ray was one of the first people I met when I did my first atheist conference. I was a religious person. I won't go into my whole story, but my children and I transitioned away from religion, but I was in Tennessee in a very religious area. And I felt like it wasn't accurate, but at the time I felt like I didn't know another non-believer. And I just had to surround myself with people. My kids were starting to leave and go to college, and I just needed to be with people that were not religious. And so I, out of the blue, decided to go to the Des Moines American Atheist Conference in 2000. I don't know if it was 2010, something like that. And Daryl Ray was one of the first people I met, and one of his books had just come out. I don't remember which one. And he's Daryl. He's talkative and gregarious and friendly. And so we chatted, and then I followed his progress. He had just established recovering from religion, and over the years we had remained friends. And when the opportunity came to be a part of recovering from religion, I couldn't jump at it fast enough. And so that's kind of the Reader's Digest condensed version of how I connected with Daryl in recovering from religion.
Well, how was it like in those earlier days, like 2010, like going to an American Atheist conference and then maybe going to like a recovering from religion meeting?
For me, I was completely immersed in religion. So for me, it was radical. Other people as they come, and times have changed. That was almost 10 years ago. Times have changed. It may not feel radical. To me, it was everything. I had a whole seismic shift in how I saw things because I was so immersed in religion, and I had based my politics and my outlook and my goals for life and my marriage and everything was built on religion. And when I lost confidence in the truth of religion, I had to rework everything. So for me, walking into the door, and I know it sounds a little overly dramatic, but it was incredible. It was, all of these people don't believe in religion. All these people in one room don't believe in religion. And so it was a remarkable journey for me. And being a part of this, I use this shorthand, secular universe, being part of the secular universe had everything to do with my gaining confidence and learning how to be moral and reworking my life and replugging in my charitable giving and my time and my volunteer time and all of that. So it was critical for my development.
Yeah, I think I didn't grow up religious, but going to ReasonCon in Hickory, North Carolina, and that was 4 or 5 years ago. That was like the first time I got to go to a big, I went to some local stuff, but I think going to one of those things where you're like, okay, I think this is going to be good. And then you go and you're like, oh, wow, this is really
this is very
exceeding
cool.
my expectations. And you relax in a way that you probably can't in other circumstances. So that's something that I hope people don't lose, because I know some people get out of religion and then they're kind of like out and they forget kind of what it feels like. And it becomes old hat.
Sure. And we all have to, whether you come from kind of your end of the spectrum where it wasn't everything in your life, or my end where I had to recraft everything, it's important to know what the secular universe is doing right now in our country's history because of politics. It's incredibly important to understand the influence of religion in our political scene. And so even if you're someone like you and you didn't need it for everything, you didn't need it for your support group or your, reworking your career or your life, it's still important, the things that the secular universe and movement do to try to get us up to speed on what's going on around us is critically important for everybody.
And were you living in Tennessee at the time?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Was it a tough, I guess, transition with family and friends?
It was.
It's learning the new you.
Yes, and we'll talk about recovering from religion later. And I hear these stories all the time. At the time, I thought I was the only one that this was happening to. My kids were the ones who started the process. When they got to be young teenagers and they came to me with quite legitimate questions, the boat and the animals and bashing the infants' heads on the rocks and all the bad stuff in the Bible, and the academic incorrectness of the Bible, all of it, they came to me with questions and we journeyed together. And long story short, each one of us on our own, I was tail end Charlie. I was resistant. The children were not as vested in religion. So it took me a little bit longer than it took them. But it was terribly difficult. My parents still struggle with it. My marriage didn't survive. I mean, at the I'm 10, 12 years out now, and now I can look on it and I can tell it in a rational way. But at the time, the expression I think is between a rock and a hard place. I could stay in and fake it, not believe it, which I tried to do for about a year. That didn't work. Or I can come out and hurt everybody, kill my parents, my very religious parents, hurt it was effectively ended my marriage, all of those things. And that was the decision that I had to make. And I guess that's why I'm so sensitive to people's journey away from religion and why it's such a good match for me to be at recovering from religion.
So what do you do on the board? What's the position you have with recovering from religion?
Mm-hmm. I'm the executive director. We do have a governing board, and the way our organization is structured, we're an entirely volunteer organization. From me, Daryl is the president of the board and also the founder of Recovering from Religion, to our newest trained volunteer. Everybody is it's a volunteer organization, and that makes a difference in how we use our resources. Everything that we do it's out of concern and care for our brothers and sisters who are struggling with issues of doubt and non-belief. So our helpline, which is we have a telephone helpline 24 hours, and we have a chat line on internet chat, so you can type rather than talk on the phone, to our online community, to our local support groups. Everything we do is about understanding the struggle and the arduous journey sometimes it is to get through this. And folks come to us, Zach, everywhere on the spectrum, from people like me who were totally immersed in religion to people who maybe they're not struggling with it, maybe a loved one is struggling with it. Wherever, whatever kind of help you need, we have a vast resources tab with podcasts and lectures and books, and to our online community, to our chats. It's all about us paying it forward, so to speak, to the folks who need a little bit of help.
And are you still looking for volunteers for the helpline and for
always? As a matter of fact, every time we have a monthly board meeting, we look at our statistics, and there are more phone calls and more chats than we can take. And it's a matter of, we have a critical mass in society of people leaving religion, and our volunteers, they are wonderful to come in, and we have a pretty it's a pretty relaxed organization. When you come in, we don't demand that you do this many hours in a month, and you don't have to sign up for a shift. It's pretty loose, and we catch as many calls as we can with our volunteers being available. And because we're global, of course, we occupy all 24 hours of the day because we're in different time zones and everywhere around the world, both our clients and our volunteers. So we're always looking for volunteers. The process is relatively straightforward. There's an application, there's an interview, there's a little bit of training, and then you're ready to take a phone call or to take a chat with someone who in their lives, they may be at the lowest point or in a crisis. And so it's an overwhelming responsibility, but it's tremendously gratifying.
Yeah, it's definitely, and I've heard about the training on some other podcasts, and that it's not really a talking someone out of anything. It's just a listening. And that's what people need when they're questioning, is someone who's going to listen and not judge them.
Well, and you have to understand our strategy behind that. We market ourselves to the religious community. And if the word is out that, don't call those people, they're just going to talk you out of religion. Number one, we don't want that reputation. We zealously guard our reputation as not being a deconversion process. And number two, that's what religion does. It tries to convince you of, reasons to believe this. And we are so not about that. It is you described it well. It's a non-judgmental place to be able to ask your questions. It's a place to get resources. It's a place to have someone with a compassionate, listening ear field your questions and maybe get you to think about things in a different way. We're all over the place as far as what people's needs are when they come to us. And so the training, it's about the client. It's not about, and in fact, we have parameters, we have barriers in place. We don't do a lot of self-disclosure as agents on the chat line, because it's not about us. If I get a client that wants to talk about coming out, and all I want to do is tell about my experience coming out, that's not helpful. And so it's this, even though we are not professional therapy, we are absolutely peer support. There are questions that one can ask to help a person process this emotional event that is happening in their lives.
Yeah, and it's definitely good to see leading with empathy, because I know you've discussed kind of morality and how it's important to, you have to see what the other person is going to say. You can't just wait to talk in that case. You're definitely listening in that one. And so the helpline is an important aspect. The chat, the having kind of local groups where people can meet are important. But this year, things are going to the next level. So what's up with this fall excursion?
Outstanding. I love talking about this. I'm so glad you brought it up. Everything that we do at Recovering from Religion, we started with the telephone hotline, and then we added the chat line because we thought that'll give people more ways to reach us, because sometimes they couldn't carve out privacy for a phone call. So we added that. And then we saw, remember I mentioned that we don't do self-disclosure, and we saw a need that these folks really do want to talk to people who are on similar journeys. So we created our online community, and after a chat or a phone call, we invite people in, and they self-select the community in which they want to be a part. And in there, that's all clients, and they can talk to each other. And every religion has its own language and its own terms, and it's all of that. And so they're able to talk to other folks who are on a similar journey. So all of those things have been our effort to say, how can we help? What else can we do? And it occurred to our brilliant treasurer, Shannon Nebo. This is kind of her brainchild. She came up with the idea of perhaps a weekend religion recovery retreat in a retreat setting, an actual in-person for the weekend. And we have planned hopefully our first annual fall excursion, which is what we're calling our weekend getaway. It's in the mountains of Western North Carolina. It's in cabins. It's in a retreat setting. It's a weekend we're going to have some professional therapists there. We're going to have some talk times. We're going to have fun, kind of like if you've ever done any kind of a church camp or church retreat. It's all the good stuff and none of the bad stuff. So it's getting to know one another. It's taking some nature walks. It's having some guided sessions where they can sort of have this time and space to unpack some of the baggage that accompanies leaving and doubting religion. This is in September of this year. The cabins are going quickly, and it's such a unique place that each of the cabins has its own layout for what kind of sleeping arrangements there are and that kind of thing. So recoveringfromreligion.org is the website. We are hoping we have through the generosity of some of our major donors, we're hoping to be able to defray the costs of some of this. And so there's a link at the website for the fall excursion, and you can pick your cabin and you can register all in one place. And we are so excited about it. We can't wait to see what the future holds with this.
So who from like the board will be there?
Well, nearly the whole board will be there. The recovering, of course, Daryl will be there, and of course, I'll be there. And as I said, we'll have some therapy. The Secular Therapy Project is also a project of recovering from religion, and I'm sure you've heard of it. It's vetted therapists that are all over the world, but mostly all over the United States, that have been vetted by our professional staff to ensure that they provide only evidence-based therapy, no woo and no religious, any of that. And clients can access those therapists at our website, at the Secular Therapy Project website. In addition to that, some of those therapists have agreed to come on the weekend retreat with us, and will be available throughout the weekend as we craft our sessions, as we craft our get together, and then a great number of our volunteers will be there as well. So it should just be a dynamic weekend, and we're so excited about it.
Well, how many people will be there then?
About 100. We can accommodate about 100. And so it'll be big enough and small enough. And so we're just and we got to do a field trip to the site, to the venue, and it's just gorgeous. And we're going to have Southern barbecue one night, and we're going to have bonfires, and bring your musical instrument if you want to do that. Like I said, the whole weekend getaway setting, and the focus will be, let's get this baggage unpacked.
Sounds like a fun trip.
It's going to be an awesome time.
Well, I'd love to talk about NanoCon, but I want to talk about a specific NanoCon memory that is going to be hard to top if NanoCon goes on for 50 years. How did your farm become the site of the wedding of 2018, Callie and Celeste?
The wedding of the year. It was, we've been having NanoCon, I think this is the 4th or 5th year, I can't remember. And because of our proximity to Nashville, my partner and I have been along with Patrick Horst and several others, the founders of NanoCon. We started with a simple get-together, and then it turned into NanoCon, and now it's become kind of a tradition. And usually NanoCon is a one-day event. It's the Saturday event. But because I'm half an hour from Nashville and I have this little farm, we have almost always on the Friday night before NanoCon thrown a big bonfire. It's, chill, and everybody's just hanging. And so that's always been the tradition. And I don't even remember the sequence of events on, whether it was Callie or Celeste or both of them that reached out to me. And of course, there was no hesitation or question at all for them to be able to do their wedding here. And it was in the springtime, and everything's beautiful, and they were breathtaking, and the whole wedding was as moving and touching. It's one of the deep privileges of my life to have been able to help them with that. It was just so joyful.
Yeah, I remember being at ReasonCon the year before, and that's when the proposal came out, and then it's like, well, NanoCon, of course I'm going to go. My parents live in Nashville, so it's an easy trip for me. But then it was like, oh, this wedding is going to happen as part of the weekend too, and it was like a gathering of a lot of atheist podcasters and people we knew online were there. And then it was funny because usually you do a wedding as like a reception, as like a party, and this one's like everybody's got to go, but the event itself was great. Everybody had to like hit the road and get to the airport and go, but it was a great location. And Bobby from The Religion Required did the ceremony, and a cat walked across during the ceremony, because you have a few cats at the farm. I don't know how many animals you have total out there,
and I think a donkey brayed during the service, or maybe the cattle mooed. I don't know what it was. It was everything. It was just too perfect.
I mean, you're in nature, and you're almost in an area where like you do Google Maps online, and it's like, I don't know, I can't help you guys, but
or whatever.
We're able to find the place.
And we just pulled all the lawn chairs up. It just came together in the most touching and beautiful way. I'll never forget being able to participate in that.
And you've been kind of in the, you said kind of like secular universe for a while. After all this time, why is it still important to have atheists and or secular conferences?
So many of us maybe not in all areas of the US, but so many of us live in such highly religious communities. Those conferences, they serve not only as a really important social piece, they serve to inspire us, they serve to inform us, they serve to educate us. I just hopscotch from one to the next. Every time one is finished, I can't wait to get to the next one. And now these are lifelong friends. These are friends I've had for 10 and 12 years. And so the social thing has become so important. And yet, how important is it with our political environment the way it is now to be completely aware of what's going on, to understand what the impact that religion is having on our politics and our elections and that kind of thing. It's as important. Even though I love the social piece of it, it's as important for me to go to be informed and to catch up and to hear these talks and hear these presentations about what's going on. So many of them related to the impact that religion has in people's lives. You know, that's kind of the piece that ties us all together when we go to American Atheist or when we go to NanoCon. It's important for us to have to be exposed to that and to understand all that.
Well, what was tougher for you, running for state senate or doing the Ironman?
Running for state senate or doing the Ironman, they were certainly challenges, each in their own way.
In your case, Iron Woman, but we can do Iron.
I can live with Ironman. The irony about that word is Ironman. The Ironman event, that's actually a trademarked logo. That's the Ironman. You can do an iron distance event, and you're not really supposed to say that you're an Ironman. You're supposed to say you're an iron distance athlete, but it's so ubiquitous. Everybody just says Ironman, but Ironman belongs to Ironman. So I've never technically done an Ironman. I've done an iron distance race, same mileage. It's the 2.5 in the water, 112.
We're dealing with someone who's been to law school here with the
legalese.
It's good.
We have to be technically correct.
Right.
They were each challenging in their own way. I would say, that's such an interesting thing. I can't land on one or the other on which was more difficult or which was more gratifying, because they were both extremely difficult and they were both extremely gratifying.
My only question about doing the Ironman is why it seems it's like, okay, the original person who did the marathon in the famed story died at the end, and that's 1/3 of what you're doing. You're swimming, what, 2.4 miles?
2.4, 112 on the bike, and 26. Yeah.
3 states, and then doing a marathon. I think is the finale.
Yes, but you know the history of where those distances came from. Why would you go 112 on the bike? Is because it did start in Hawaii, not the marathon, the triathlon, and they rode around the Big Island, and it was 112 miles, whatever. And so it's an arbitrary distance. It's just that's what tradition has become. And you get, I don't know, maybe because I have achievement personality disorder or something. I don't know. It's a thing. It's a thing. I just think I wanted to do. A couple of years ago, one of my second son came to me and told me he wanted to do an iron distance event with me before I got too old. So that was nice. And then we trained for and did one together. And now I think I'm going to do one more in a couple of years. And I put the word out to my kids. If you're wanting to do this thing with Mama, this may be the last one I do. I love everything about it. I love the little colored boxes on my training schedule. I love that it keeps me focused. I love that it keeps me fit. And I love the camaraderie and all that bullshit about, can we say that? All that stuff that's between the athletes and I'm kind of a derp like that, but I love them.
Didn't you inhale like water at the very beginning?
I did.
It was your first one, but it was.
Yes, it was not my. So triathlons come in about 4 distances. There's the big guy that everybody knows, the Ironman, and then there's one that's half the distance of that, half the distance of that, and half the distance of that. You can do a sprint triathlon where it's an 800-yard swim, it's a 20-mile bike ride, and then it's a 3-mile run. It's called a sprint. It's tiny. You can do that, or you can do the big guy. And I blog about training and secularism and different things at Happy Healthy Heathen. That's my blog. And so I did blog about, I was in Florida and I was doing a half iron distance, and it was out into the waves, a left turn, and back. And I had gotten across those real high waves that day. And of course, the story's in the blog somewhere at the blog. I had crossed the waves. I made my left turn. And when I did and took my first breath, I got hit full on with a face full of water. And I struggled for the entire rest of the swim trying to get my lungs back. And of course, the swimming is the first thing. So then you have to do that on your bike. And then you have to do that with the run. So it's brutal. It's punishing. But, you do a triathlon. It's a big deal.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, how can I relate? Oh, well, yesterday I went for a 3-mile run. I think I swallowed some gum halfway through, and I made it. I toughed it out.
Yeah, I know. It's the whole derpy. What can you do? What can you achieve? What can you make your body do? All that. I know. I'm weird. I accept it.
It's the kind of weird we need. So before you decided to run for state senate in Tennessee, did you have any political background? Like, what made you decide? Obviously your to-do list and bucket list is probably pretty impressive, but what made you decide to do that in particular?
Yeah, that one almost sort of kind of happened to me instead of the other way around. I had, to get back into my leaving religion story, after my marriage fell apart and my kids all graduated from high school and left me for college, and I'm on my own, and I'm newly divorced. And so, of course, like every other 50-year-old divorced lady, I had to do something. So I went to law school. And while I was in law school, one of the reasons I went to law school, not for the traditional reasons of wanting to have a big, fat, hairy practice, I wanted the information. I wanted the knowledge. I've always been interested in the law, and I'd always wanted to go to law school. So I did. And I developed almost an obsession with our Constitution, our First Amendment, how, the history of our country, the history of how our Constitution has governed our country anyway. So that I've always been interested in politics.
And I have a copy of the Constitution.
There it is. Outstanding. That's wonderful. And so so that led to a further interest in national politics. So I have always just been interested in it. And then here locally, I was involved with my local Democratic Party. And in 2016, which is the big year, there was a state Senate seat in my district, and the guy hadn't even. Democrats are so decimated in Tennessee. We don't have anything. we get our asses handed to us. We've had a Republican supermajority for about 10 years, and even though I knew what the odds were, I was interested in running. I felt like Tennessee's in a hot mess. We didn't expand Medicaid. We don't have our education fully funded. We don't have rural broadband in the rural areas. In my district, my state Senate district's a rural area. And I felt like I have a big mouth and thick skin. And even though I knew I was going to get blasted because of the atheism, I felt like someone needed to speak up for these folks, because these are low information, not highly educated people who are suffering. They're suffering because they don't have health care. They're suffering because their children are not getting the quality education that they should have. They're suffering because they don't know how the system works, and they continue to vote against their best interests because the Republican message in Tennessee is so closely tied with the religious message, and this is a highly religious area. And I felt like I might be able to break through with that. I knew it was radical, and I knew they wouldn't like it, but I thought something's got to get people's attention, and we can't just keep losing, and we can't just keep having mainstream Democratic candidates who just keep losing. And I thought it would rattle the system a little bit, which it did. I didn't win the seat, and I ran twice. I ran in 2016, and it was I don't know, he'd been in there years and years and years, and then he took a position in the Trump administration, and the seat became open again in 2018 in a special election. And that always gives you better odds because you're not running against an incumbent. That's the way politics works. And so I chose again to run, and it was quite an experience.
Well, when you did your presentation at AmCon, were you talking about just your experience in both elections?
Mostly the most recent one. In 2016, the incumbent against whom I was running was so deeply entrenched. And at the time, remember, this was pre-2016, this was pre-Trump election. These races, Tennessee is so Republican, nothing was shaking loose. And so my atheism didn't even come up. The guy I was running against, it's a strategy, and it was successful for him. He didn't pay any attention to me. So, and then in 2018, the whole world had changed because everybody woke up, and even the people in Tennessee, the Democrats in Tennessee anyway, had woken up. We had had a special election in a district nearby just before my seat became available, and we had come close. And so all of those things together, I thought it's worth trying it again. And of course, it was an entirely different run. And I'm going to share that this weekend at American Atheist, and I shared it in Anacon. It was quite a ride because the Tennessee Republican Party came after my atheism with a vengeance.
Yeah, when did you decide to just turn to the skid? Because in your presentation, and if you're going to be in Cincinnati, you should really check it out. You were talking about actual issues that people were dealing with. You weren't leading with being an atheist, but it came out, but then you just had to deal with it. What made you say, hey, you just have to be your true self and let people know that this is part of who you are, but you're still trying to make
and you know
better.
And you know, Zach, the funny thing is, so I had made the decision. I ran as an open atheist in 2016. It wasn't a big deal. When I made the decision to run in 2018, same deal. I didn't want to, nor was it possible for me to hide from it. The way I said it was, I was neither going to run on it, nor was I going to hide from it. In hindsight, if I would do anything differently, I would have even run harder being an atheist, because it is my lack of belief that motivates me. It's my lack of thinking someone's going to save us. It's my lack of believing that there's some kind of a cosmic plan. It's my acceptance and embrace of the fact that we are the ones that have to resolve these issues. We are the ones that have to fix these problems, rather than throwing our hands up and praying about it. And so even though I tried to do a little bit of that, the atheism was such a difficult thing for folks. It was such a showstopper. Some people had admitted to me they've never met anybody that doesn't believe the way they do, which is not surprising for a rural religious district in Tennessee. But I was trying to walk that thin line of how much can I push them, because I didn't want to focus on it. I wanted to focus on the fact that we need health care, that Tennessee didn't expand Medicaid, that our hospitals are closing because they can't stay open without insurance. And so I just didn't want to, the conversation was not about religion. It wasn't about atheism. It was about Tennessee and the problems that we face in this district. And so it was a constant internal conversation with myself on how far to go with it. And because I like talking about it, and actually the Republicans did me the favor of, because they elevated it and made it such a big deal, my opponent never even sent a postcard with any of his positions, because they made it such a big deal. And this is something I share in my talk. I was able to over and over and over again, in podcasts, in television, and newspaper interviews, and radio interviews, and in appearances, I was able to explain what it means to be a humanist. I was able to explain, from where do I get my morality? I was able to explain that it's not a book-based or a rules-based morality, that the suffering of my neighbors moves me to act, and their well-being is my concern. And so we as atheists, we get so tired of being strawmanned by the religious community all the time. You know, how you just make stuff up. How can you be moral? Whatever. And I was given an opportunity in large numbers of people over and over again to try to dispel the straw man a little bit and to give an explanation. Did they hear it? Probably, maybe some of them, I don't know. But it gave me the opportunity to at least open the door to the conversation about what it means to live a life free of dogma and based around human suffering and well-being.
See, that's why you're such a good guest. You've already answered my next question. So.
You mean, that's your polite way of saying, God, you talk so much.
Well, that's why you're on the show, because you talk well. It's not for me to talk. Listen to this show, maybe a little bit. But yeah, well, I mentioned it earlier in the kind of the talk about morality. And I work in marketing, so I understand. And in politics, it's kind of the same. You have to repeat a message. And if you're an atheist, you might have to repeat a message 50 times for one person to hear it for the first time, and you just have to do it. And some people are really good at doing that, and other people are just like, okay, I've done this 3 times, I'm done. So the fact that you could keep repeating the message and be in a situation where not winning an election, but getting a lot of votes anyway still is a victory, but it's got to be an example, because you look, and I don't know if in national races do we have one single person who's like openly an atheist. Like even the people who are like not associated don't really admit it until they're out. And it's like, there's just a CNN poll about how many more nuns there are in the country, people who don't believe in.
Well, the most
like
recent
the end
poll
of your career
is we're as big as the evangelical group. That was the most recent one, which is fascinating to me, that we're actually reached those levels. It's, this is, religion is, the mentality is so resistant. And that's why when you do talk about it, your point about having to say it over and over and over again, you're not just having to remind them of it, you're having to break down what their resistance to it is and what the message is that they've gotten. These are 70-year-old people who have been in church since infancy, and they've gotten, there's no better word than indoctrination. They simply believe this way. And so it takes chipping away, and it takes, you do have to be authentic. You can't just say things. And then if I were to say all this about, oh, we have this higher morality because, it's based on people's well-being and whatever, you have to do that. And running for office was genuinely, I wanted to help people in my community. I've done all my Ironman training on the bicycle in this little district, this little 5-county district down in rural Tennessee. And I've met these people, and I've eaten at the diners, and I've seen them on the side of the road because I've done miles and miles on my bicycle. I even had my bicycle on the logo because people associated with me, because I've met them. I care about them. I care that their kids get a quality education. I care that their children have opportunities. I care about their health. I care that they get so sick and with no health care, the only place they can go is the emergency room, which is a stupid financial decision for everybody, for the state, for the patient, for the hospital, for everybody. And I felt like that's my motivation. And so if you can trash me for rejecting religion, you can say all those things, but you can't say that I didn't try to do it because of a genuine, authentic reason of wanting to make my community better for everybody. And that I thought that would take me a little farther than I thought that the people who struggled with the religion piece of it, that the authenticity might override that. This was the second election cycle was special election, so it was compressed. It was a 12-week cycle and not 2 years or whatever it was. So I didn't run what's called a persuasion campaign. I didn't have the time. I was mostly trying to reach my people, the Democrats that are that were in the district, and we were hoping because we could sort of squeeze in there. But as you heard in my talk, my opponent used such unconstitutional tactics by reaching out to the churches and scaring them and getting them to tell their people there's a special election and this baby-eating atheist is running for office and you've got to vote for this guy, which was, it was brutal. So, you got to live, you got to walk the walk and talk the talk. And then hopefully, if nothing else, there were thousands of people that we met in the district who met an atheist lady. They may not have liked me, but I think they were exposed to the fact that she didn't seem like she was going to stab me. She didn't seem like she stole my purse. Just any kind of visibility, as I said in my talk, is everything. We have to become visible, and we have to, this is a lesson we learned from our LGBTQ brothers and sisters. Visibility, people falling in love with you and knowing that they care about you and then finding out something about you is sort of our hidden strategy. We're not trying to do it that way. You're just part of your community and you're active and you're doing river cleanup or highway cleanup or tutoring after school or whatever it is you're doing in your normal regular life. And then all of a sudden they find out that you're not a believer and you've already shown who you are.
Well, living in a state like Tennessee that's like super red, and especially in rural areas, is there, from your experience, would you have advice that the Democratic Party is like, well, how do we win? How do we turn people's minds?
Gosh, I wish I knew the answer to that. I spend a lot of time thinking about it. I do believe in the simple idea that one should be a lot like the people in one's district. However, and I know I'm not in the religious sense, but I am in every other sense. My children went to public school. I'm a farmer. I have cattle. I worry about the weather because I have the animals. I understand the things that the people in my district faced, and so that I matched the district that way. But the religious difference was just too much to overcome. So there's a piece of me that wants to say, make sure that you match your district in some way. I absolutely advocate being active no matter where you are on the spectrum. You don't have to run for state senate. You don't have to run for office, but it's almost like the responsibility half of the privilege of living in a country that technically is free and equal and just. There's a responsibility piece, and whether that means being a part of a campaign and knocking doors, or maybe donating money, or being part of your local party, or at the very least being aware of what legislation is coming, how your government works. We have an obligation. We have an obligation, and so that's another thing that I want to tell all Democrats, but a lot in the non-religious community. We are too important not to be active.
Yeah, if people don't realize that by now,
right?
That's going to be tough. Now, I was checking out your Twitter feed, and as a lawyer, of course, double check to make sure that I'm correct on these people. But you have announced that you've made donations to Elizabeth Warren, Kamala Harris, and then Mayor Pete, whose last name I have trouble pronouncing. So why make it public who you've supported, and why are these particular candidates for the 2020 Democratic nomination worthy of your money, and you kind of giving them a shout out as well?
Wow, great question. Well, one of the first things that before I donated to any candidate, I've been blowing up my social media with, there is a site that's called Unify or Die, and it's just about whoever it is. And this sounds like a broken record. Everybody's heard this since the 2016 election. We've got to unify. We got to rally behind one person. I love that everybody's running. The more the merrier. And the reason is because of this, Zach, and this is my theory. It's one I'm kind of making up on the fly. I don't know how to beat Trump because I don't understand. I cannot get in the minds of people who love and support him. And I have tried to, in a completely non-snarky way, I've tried to have an understanding and to empathize with what they're feeling, the fear and the anger and anyway, I've tried. I've struggled with it. So because I have such a lack of grasping why they like him so much, rather than try to figure that out, I've kind of given up on that. I've accepted that I'm probably not going to be able then to determine how do we beat him, because I don't know why those people like him. So it's hard to know how we beat him. But our voters do. Our voters know who they want and who they like. So people who are not interested in voting for Trump, the Trump people are going to vote for him. And as we've all resigned ourselves to the fact that they're going to, it's not enough for him to win. So everybody else that falls into the puddle of not voting for Trump, I don't think there's a very good way to predict who can beat him. I don't know, but political physics doesn't apply anymore. And so because I don't think we understand that, I think we have to throw it out. I think we throw this whole mass of people who are running, all of them, 20 or 21 or 22 or however many there are, let the voters decide who are we going to have the most enthusiasm behind. Now, I have some preferences. I'm just crazy about those three that you named. Those are my top three, but I liked all of them. I think they're all great, and I think they all have potential, and they're all a damn sight better than Trump. So I think that we let the non-Trump people decide who do we think we can rally behind the most, and then it happens, and we have the primary, and whether it's one of my favorites or not, doesn't matter. All right, let's all get behind them and go. It's terribly unscientific. It's a lot of wishful thinking, and yet it's where I am now. And the reasons I like those people are, policy and personality and several reasons why I like those particular three candidates, and not in any particular order. But that's my theory on let's be wide open about it. Let's put it out there. Let's see the person who can rally. If it's Biden, awesome. Then it looks like maybe he'll pick up enough of the dissatisfied Republicans. If it's, crazy left Bernie, if it's something like that, then maybe he picks up the young and enthusiastic voters and makes up for that. I don't know who's gonna shake out, but let the games begin.
Yeah, the idea of like reaching out for Trump voters when I think Trump won with fewer votes than Romney got in 2012. It's like Trump's going to have that entrenched thing going for him, and he's
Right.
going to play like he's the victim because he plays dumb and super smart at the same time, and which one he actually pulls off. But yeah, I think it's different. I hope it's different than the whole Republican mess in 2016 and 2012 where they had like a different leader every week.
Yeah.
Because we need those voices out there. Like, Sanders seems like a repeat, but it's like he had a lot of enthusiasm. I saw him speak in Atlanta, and it was pretty amazing.
Oh, yeah.
The age thing might be a problem, but okay, have a young running mate or something. And
right. I agree.
I think we need as many like debates as possible and discussion, and we can talk about unification when the actual votes are counted, and then we know who wins. And I'm sure people are going to complain about it because that's the world we live in now. But it's just we're going to do this. This is how politics is now, and
yeah, that's why. And then, you said it.
More the merrier.
Yeah, is to let's let it shake out, because trying to do it strategically on maybe who can beat Trump, I think we waste time when we do that. Put them out there. Let's see who has the most support and the most enthusiasm and the most voters and the most donations, or whatever it takes. The donations don't always equal all the votes, and vice versa. And so duke it out. Y'all come up. Somebody, last man standing, last woman standing, whatever it is, and then let's line up and get behind them. So, and we've got the good news about having that many candidates. We've got every flavor, and we've got every person on the spectrum of left and moderate and young and old and men and women. And so these are your 31 flavors of ice cream. Which one do you want the most? Because we got to pick one. And so, I agree. More the merrier.
Well, for the people who are going to American Atheist this weekend, what are you kind of looking forward to? And then, of course, sell people on coming to see you if they haven't already.
Oh, yeah.
One more shot.
Yes, I think I'm speaking on Friday, but it doesn't matter because there's going to be great speakers all weekend. One of the headlining speakers is Jim Obergefell, who was the Supreme Court decision with marriage equality. So he's like an unlikely hero. He's going to speak. His spouse tragically died in the whole process of the legal battle for marriage equality. But he's going to be one of the speakers. It's always the best time. There's always pub nights, and there's games, and there's funny shows, and it's the best time, and it's all the best people, and then the vendors. Recovering from Religion is going to have a table, so you can stop by and talk to us and see how our helpline works, and you can meet people, you can meet authors, bring your books, get them signed. It's the best time. So it's in Cincinnati. Tickets are still available, although I hear that yesterday on the NPR interview, Debbie Goddard, who's the vice president, said that there are upwards of 800 or 850. They're getting close to their limit. So if you can make it, and they have a student deferral, I think, some kind of a student stipend. And so if cost is a problem, I think those may still be available. I hope they are. But it's one of the best times. So try to make it if you can. It's going to be a good time.
Sounds great. And of course, you do a lot, but do you have a special skill, talent, or like hobby that maybe people don't know about to finish out the show?
Between running for office and being a lawyer, and
what else do you have time for?
Being a gammy and being an athlete, I'm pretty locked up. I do love farm living. I plant my own vegetables and have the animals, and I know that's another dorky thing about me, but this is my favorite time of the year because I can get my tomatoes out, and it grounds me to be out in nature and being with the animals and growing the things and all the corny parts about living on a farm.
Sounds pretty good to me. So tell people where they can kind of find you online, and of course, Recovering from Religion, and
Sure.
Anything you want to steer them toward?
Thank you. Thank you. Recoveringfromreligion.org is the website, and it's there that you'll find the link to the fall excursion. Consider going to that. You'll find the chat bubble to be able to talk to a trained agent. The telephone number is 1-84-I-DOUBT-IT to be able to call in and speak to a trained agent standing by the phone. And in the meantime, you can hear Shelley Siegel sing our Recovering from Religion song if you're on hold. So sometimes I call it just to hear the song. My personal blog is Happy Healthy Heathen. But Recovering from Religion is kind of where I live. And so you can find me there. And I'm on the usual Facebook and Twitter and all that stuff with just my name. So I'm pretty easy to dig up.
Sounds good. Well, thank you a lot for being on, and have fun this weekend.
Zach, thank you. Thank you. I so enjoyed it. And I will see you at the next event where we both are.
Exactly. Sounds great.
All right. All right. Thanks again.
All right.